Okay, so we're on Daf Tes Zayin, and we're starting on actually on the bottom line of Daf Tes Vav, and the Gemara says, "V'amar Reb Chama bar Reb Chanina, Lama nismechu ahalim lenachalim." Why do we have a juxtaposition in the verse, as we'll see in a minute, a juxtaposition in the verse in Bamidbar between tents and brooks? Okay, a nachal is a brook. T'chsiv, the verse says, "Kenachalim." The pasuk says, "Kenachalim nitayu." Kiganois ale nahar kahalim nataim Hashem karazim ale mayim. Okay, and the pasuk of this talking about like they will be spread out. They will be placed out like brooks. Okay, along the river, and like tents pitched like cedars, mighty cedars. Okay, so the question is that you see there's a juxtaposition in the verse between a tent and a brook. What's the connection? Lo malacha to tell you, ma nechalim, just like a brook, ma'alin adam mituma latara, brings up a person from a state of ritual impurity to purity, right? If one uses it as a mikvah to purify himself. Af ahalim, also a tent, which is supposed to be a euphemism or a parable for the house of study. Ma'alin adam mikavchova lekavschus, brings one from a place of guilt to a place of merit. Okay, so therefore the juxtaposition between a tent and a brook it makes sense in this context. Okay, now we said the end of the Mishnah we said akar mafrele yatsa. If one does it out of order, is not yotzi, and we said if one makes a mistake, he goes back to the place where he made the mistake. Okay, now. Rav Ami and Rav Asi have a kakatrin leganana Rav Elazar. They were tying a canopy for Rav Elazar. They were making the chuppah for Rav Elazar's wedding. Okay, and Rav Elazar was sitting there watching them, and Amalahu he told them, while you guys are sitting here working hard, I'll go listen to something in the base medrash. At least you won't miss out on the learning. I'll tell you what they're saying in the base medrash, and I'll tell you what they said. Could be because he was fasting on the day of your wedding, so he was weak and he couldn't help them with the making of the canopy, but. Whatever the case is, Azal he went, and he found a Tana who was learning in front of Rav Yochanan and said the following statement. What is it? Kar, if a person's reading the Shema, and he made a mistake. He doesn't know where his mistake was. So the din's like this. If he's in the middle of a paragraph, right, and he wakes up and he realizes he made a mistake, he should go back to the beginning of that paragraph. If he finds himself between one of the paragraphs, he goes back to the first paragraph. And Beik Siva Laksiva, where we have the pasuk when it says Ukasavtam, right? It says Ukasavtam twice in the first paragraph of the Shema and in the second paragraph of the Shema. If he made a mistake and he wasn't Beik Siva Laksiva, somewhere in between there, Yachzor Laksiva Rishona. He says Ukasavtam and then he wakes up out of his stupor, his tiredness and his drowsiness in the morning, let's say, or at night in any event, and he realizes he said Ukasavtam. He doesn't know if he just said the first Ukasavtam, the first paragraph, or the second one. So Yachzor Laksiva Rishona goes back to the pasuk where the first Ukasavtam is the first paragraph. And with Amar Le Rav Yochanan, who is hearing this Tana say that, he says, Lai Shanu Ella Shalai Pasach B'Laman Yirbu Yimechem. This din is only if he did not yet say Laman Yirbu Yimechem, which is the last line, the last verses before we say Vayomer, the last paragraph of Shema. Aval Pasach B'Laman Yirbu Yimechem. If he started in Laman Yirbu Yimechem, Sarch Einakat V'Asi. He could remember. It's basically, it means literally his habit is attached and goes with him, which means that the Mefarshim explain. Rashi explains that the parsha of Vayomer of the Tzitzis is a very fluent one in one's mouth, so he would know if he had said that one or not. So if he said Laman Yirbu Yimechem al Adama Shnishba Hashem la v'zeich l'seislam kimei Shemaim ala Aretz, and then he starts saying Vayomer, right? If he just said that, if he's up to there, we could assume that he already said the two paragraphs before. And the reason he didn't remember is because the two paragraphs before he's not as clear about as the paragraph of Vayomer. Okay, but Amar Asav Amar Lahu. So this Rav Elazar told Rav Ami Rav Asi, who were making his chuppah, they were making his canopy for his wedding. If Amarluni told them, and Amrulay, they told him back, had we not come to hear only this statement that of this din of when you go back in Shema, and particularly this din of Rabbi Yochanan, that if you said Laman Yirbu Yimechem, he continues on from there, that would have been enough. Meaning we very much appreciated this din. Okay, now the Mishnah continues. Ha'omnin koirin b'roisha ilan u'b'roisha nidvach masha'in rishayin lasses came betfila. Ha'omnin means the skilled workers. They could read on the top of a tree. They're workers, and some people change the gears here to the poyalim by the tree, because it's just really talking about ordinary workers who are picking fruits from trees. But in any case, the umnim, these workers, they could read Shema on the top of the tree, or Barosh HaNidvach is the top of the pile of stones. It's talking about Nidvach is when they're building a stone wall, and they're on top, they're on sort of like the scaffold, they're on this top of the wall itself. They could read Shema there. Masha'en and Rishai Lasses came to Tefillah, they cannot do so when it comes to Tefillah, because the nature of Tefillah, the Shemona Esrei Brachos, you have to have more kavana, and therefore you have to actually go down to the ground when it came time for davening. But Shema they could read up there. Okay, the Mishnah says, "Chasen pater mikriya Shema." A chasen, a groom who is marrying, as we'll see, a virgin who's afraid of first time having relations with her, from hurting her or from finding that she wasn't a virgin. He's pater mikriya Shema laila rishona. He's exempt from the responsibility of saying Kriya Shema the first night until when? Ve'ad Matzai Shabbos, until Matzai Shabbos and Le'asa Maisa. That means the first 4 nights he's torrid, as we'll see in the Gemara. His concentration is very much disturbed, and he can't have kavana, and it's Isaac Mitzvah, as we said, and therefore he's exempt from his need to say Kriya Shema for the first 4 nights, as long as he hadn't done yet the Maisa. If he had relations on that night, Wednesday night or Thursday night or Friday night, they used to get married traditionally on Wednesday night, virgins. So if he had relations on any of those nights, then his chiyuv, his responsibility to say Kriya Shema, would in fact return. Okay, but if he didn't, Mefarshim explained, the commentaries explained, if he didn't yet, for whatever reason, he's nervous, she's nervous, and they haven't by Saturday night, that's enough time that he's good with her, he feels comfortable with her. So even if something comes up, and for whatever reason, he doesn't find the signs of virginity in her, or whatever it is that's bothering him, he's still gonna be okay. So his responsibility, his chiyuv of saying Shema, comes back on Motzei Shabbos. Okay. And there's a story of Rabbi Gamliel. Shenasa Isha, he married a woman, Vikara Laila Harishona, and he in fact did read the first night. And Amr Talmida of his students told him, Lamadatein Rabbeinu, you taught us, Rabbi, Sha'achas Pater Krishma, that Achas is Pater Krishma. So how come you're saying it? Amr Lehem, he told them, Eni Shamei Alochem, I'm not going to listen to you. Levatel Imeni Malcha Shemayim, to annul the responsibility of taking upon myself the yoke of heaven. I feel Sha'achas even for a moment. So I am extra stringent with myself, and therefore I didn't take any breaks. Okay? Tana Rabbanan, the Gemara says, Ha'omnin Koirin Beroish Ha'ilan. We said these workers, they could read Shema on the top of the tree or on top of this brick wall that they're laying, stone wall, and they could even daven on the top of a zayas, which is a olive tree, or a fig tree. And the commentaries explain either that's because two diametrically opposed views, but really that comes to the same thing. Either that's because these trees have very strong branches, and therefore one could stand on it and not worry that he's going to fall, because he relies on his weight on the branch that he won't fall. Okay, so therefore the zayat tree and the te'ena tree, he's allowed to even daven on them. Other Mefarshim say that no, that there's a lot of branches, so we're not going to allow him to get down, because it's very difficult to get down from the tree. By getting down from the tree, he's actually going to by going down from the tree, he's going to, in fact, take a lot of time off from his work to do that. Okay, but it says the Gemara V'shar Kol Ilanos, all other trees Yardin Lamata Mispalim, he has to actually go down and daven. Okay, and first wide line of the Gemara, Balabayas, if the Balabayas is there, the guy who actually owns the property, the responsibility of the full work, Benkach Yardin Lamata Mispal. In any event, he should go down whatever kind of tree, because he can't concentrate as properly any way you cut it if you go down to the ground, and we prefer that he goes down to the ground, and since he's the owner, he could take off for the 5 minutes to go down. Okay, Rami le Rav Mori bra de Bashmul Rava. Rami, there was a question asked by Rav Mori, the daughter of the son of Shmuel. Okay, bra means this. I'm sorry, the son of the daughter of Shmuel to Rava. Okay, now Rashi brings over here an interesting story that the daughter of Shmuel was actually captured and she was raped. On board when she was captured, when she was taken into captivity, and she was actually the guy who had raped her was a non-Jewish guy. His name was Isser. Okay, and he was born out of this reunion. he was born out of this relationship. Okay, so it was sort of a ganai, even though we find the Gemara says that later on Isser actually to tshuva, he was misgayer, he converted to Judaism, but still, since the initial action of the conception was done in a quite unholy way, they actually don't refer to him by his father's name, and they call him the son of the daughter of Shmuel. Okay? In any event, he asked Rava, Tanan, we learned in the Mishnah, the skilled workers could read on the Reisha Ilam Reisha Nidvach, Alma, you see, kavana. You see, one doesn't really need the full intent when saying Shema, because we said that your intention is not so great on top of these things. For a mini, I'll ask you a question. It says Hakar Shema, one who reads the Shema, he has to have in mind, he has to have good kavanah. Shenemar, the verse says Shema Yisrael, hear O Israel. Later on it says Askes Shema Yisrael, pay attention and listen. So Ma'ala Halon, just like over there, the word Shema is associated with Haskes, with full attention. Avkan, also over here when it says Shema Haskes, so he has to have full attention. So why? How can you say from our Mishnah seem to imply that you don't have to have full attention? Ishtik, he was quiet. So Amar Lei, he turned to him, right? And this is Rava turned back to Rav Mari, the brother of Shmuel, and he asked him, did you hear anything about this? What do you think? Amar Lei Hachi Amar Rav Sheshes. This is what I heard from Rav Sheshes. That when we say that he could be up there and do it, that's only if he doesn't do malacha. Okay, if he stops doing the malacha. That you're allowed to do malacha, you're allowed to say Shema while you're actually doing the work. So the Gemara says like Kasha, the first chapter, like we said, you need to have full concentration, whether the first line or the whole chapter, according to Rikiva. The second, after that, everyone agrees that you don't have to have the full concentration. Tan Rabbanan, we learned the workers who were doing their work, okay, they were involved in the work. Next to the Balabayas, Koirin Kriyashma. They read Krishma umavarchin lefanea ula'achrea, and they say the brachas before and after. Va'oichlin piton, and they eat they take their lunch. They have their pita lunch. Umavarchin lefanea, and they say the bracha before ula'achrea and after. Umispalin tefillah shel shmona esrei, and they also daven shmona esrei. Aval ein yarden lefanea teva. They don't have they don't go before the teva, meaning they don't have a messenger who becomes a shliach tzibor. Right? They don't do the repetition of the shmona esrei that way. Ve'ein nosen kapein, and the kohanim, if they're there, don't do a nesis kapayim because that takes too much time. Says the Gemara, the Gemara about Tanya Me'ein Yud Ches. We learned that they're supposed to do Me'ein Yud Ches, which we'll see later is this abridged version where you say just the beginning and end of all the tefillas. Rav Sheshes Leikasha, Har Rabbi Gamliel, Har Rabbi Yeshua. That's the machlokas later on between Rabbi Gamliel and Rabbi Yeshua whether one could say a abridged version of Shemona Esrei or not. So according to Rabbi Yeshua, who says you say a abridged version of Shemona Esrei, so certainly in this case you're going to say a abridged version of Shemona Esrei, the workers. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Yeshua, if it's Rabbi Yeshua, my area Poalim. What does that have to do with workers? It seems to imply that specifically they're workers. No, afilu kol adam nami. Anybody could say an abridged version. So Gemara says, it's all going according to Rabbi Gamliel. The loy kasha, there's no question. Kan over here, ba'isem b'scharan, kan ba'isem b'sudasan. If they're ba'isem b'scharan, if they're getting paid, okay, if they're getting paid on top of the fact that they're getting meals provided by the employer, okay, if they're getting paid hourly wages, then they can't be so lax with the time, and they have to say an abridged version. Even Rabbi Gamliel is going to agree that they have to say an abridged version of the Shemona Esrei because they're in a hurry, they got to keep going and to do work. And Kan, where we say that they could say the full Shemona Esrei, that's ba'isen b'sudasan, ba'isen b'sudasan. That's when they're only working for a meal compensation. They're actually not getting hourly pay, so therefore they could be a little bit more lax and take a little bit more time. And how do we prove this? Vahatanya over here, Vahatanya is benichusa, which means it's actually a proof. Usually the Vahatanya is a question from a brisa, right? Vahatanya, I saw in a brisa. Over here, the word Vahatanya means what we saw in a brisa as a proof that there is a difference between people who work for pay and people who work just for the meals. Hapoilim shaisu malacha, that are doing their malacha, it's a balabayas by the balabayas. Karan kriyishma mispal, and they could read shma and they could daven. Va'ichlin pitan ve'mevarchin lefanea, mevarchin la'achrea shtayim. So what's this case? What kind of benching do they do after? What's the two brachas? Bracha rishon, the first brachas katikuna. Okay, they say Azanis Ha'ilam Kulei B'Tuvai, the regular bracha, and Shniya, but the second bracha they sort of do an abridged version. Paseach B'Brichas Haaretz, right? They start with No Delacha, V'Koil and Bani Yerushalayim, and they have one bracha and they end it with Uvnei Yerushalayim Hakadosh Me'ever Made a bracha to Hashem Bani Barach Yerushalayim Amen, and therefore they sort of got all the brachas into that second bracha. Birchas Haaretz, the V'Koilin B'Bani Yerushalayim Birchas Haaretz, and they put the B'Bani Yerushalayim into the Birchas Haaretz. The Gemara says B'Medvar Mamurim, and the Brisa continues. When is this said? B'Osim B'Schar, if one's working for his wages. Havol Osim B'Sudasan, if he's not getting hourly wage, but he's only getting his meals paid for. Hoshahaya Balabayas Meisibimayin, or alternatively, if the Balabayas is with them, so the Balabayas is obviously if he was makbid, he would say something. Therefore, Mevarchin Ketikun, they say benching is regular, daven is regular because the Balabayas is with him, so he's showing that he wants to be mitzaref, and then it's okay if they do it regularly. Okay, so now we had a quote from the Mishnah, Chasim Pater Krishma. So how do we know that a Chasim is Pater from Krishma that night for the first 4 nights? Tana Rabbanan, B'shiftecha b'veisecha, you have to say Shema when you're sitting around your house. Prat la'isiv mitzvah, to exclude someone who's doing a mitzvah. Okay, and when you're going on your way is prat lechasin. It's coming to exclude specifically a chasin that he's pater. So the Gemara says, "Mikan from here we learn hakainis is abasula pater, that one who is marrying a virgin is pater. V'salmana chayv, one who's marrying an almana, a widow, is actually chayv. He does not relieve himself of his responsibility of saying Shema." The Gemara says, "My mashma." How do we see it from the verse? How do you see that? How is it implied? Amar Papa ki derech. It says when you're going on your way. Meaning, when you're discretionary, according to your discretion, you're just going on your way. So, derech rishus, af hachanami rishus must be that you're going on your way and doing what you want to do. So, to exclude someone who's a dvar mitzvah, where he's not just going, it's not totally discretionary. It's not your at discretion what you want to do because you have a mission, you have a thing you have to take care of, which is the mitzvah. Okay, so the Gemara says, wait a second. Milo yaskinan. Maybe is it not talking about tzigazal dvar mitzvah? Maybe he's actually going to do a mitzvah. And the pasuk saying, the Hashem saying, the Torah is telling us, look that he should read. So going on the way, you might say it might imply doing whatever you want to do, but it could also doing a mitzvah could be part of what you're doing. So maybe you should have to say. So the Gemara says no, because imkein lemakra beleches. It should say beleches, on your way. It should say on the way, when you're going on the way. My belechtecha, when you're going on your way. Shema mina beleches didachud machayeves. You're only responsible to say Shema when you're going on your way. Again, it's completely at your discretion what you're doing. Had mitzvah, but if you're doing something that's not completely at your discretion because you have to do the mitzvah, you would in fact be patiras, you'd be pater. Okay? So the Gemara asked this question that we had before. What does it have to do with marrying a virgin? I feel because zamano, that's also a mitzvah. So the Gemara says, hachatarid. Because when one marries a virgin, he is tarid. His mind can't focus because he's unsettled in terms of his mind because he's thinking about, like we said before, the fact that he's going to have relations with a virgin. So the Gemara says, "Imishum tirda," if it's about not being settled, that guy who got word that his ship is sinking and he's losing all of his possessions, so he's also pretty preoccupied. And we know that's not true because Allah Rabbi Abba Bar Zavda Amarav. We learn from Rabbi Abba Bar Zavda, the son of Rav, in the name of Rav. Although a person who is mourning is chayav b'chol mitzvos b'Torah, he's responsible in all the mitzvahs that are said in the Torah. Chutz min tefillin, besides for tefillin, shall never be peher, because they're called the glory. Right? As we said earlier, we brought this pasuk of the nevuah that Hashem came to Yechazkel and told him his wife's going to die and that he should not practice avelus. And he told him, "But pe'ercha chavashalecha, you should wear your tefillin." Mashma that other people who are avelim don't wear tefillin because it's called the pe'er, it's called the glory, and you're not in glory state when you're in mourning. But you see that in mourning you are responsible for all the other mitzvahs in the Torah, and mourning is a pretty preoccupied state. The Gemara says, "Amri hasam tirda dereshus," that's your own personal tirda, preoccupation. But hacha tirda mitzvah, it's a tirda that's a sort of an osik b'mitzvah concept because you're thinking of doing a mitzvah, of marrying a basula. Okay, now the Mishnah continues. Rachatz, since we brought in this case of Rav Gamliel saying that he did things even though it was contrary to popular halachic belief, still he had a reason for why it was. So we bring another couple of examples. Now, Rachatz Laila Harishan Shemesa Ishtay. He actually washed himself, took a shower or bath the first night after his wife died. His wife had died that day, and he took a shower. And Amalei Talmid of his students told him, Rabbeinu, you taught us that she'aval aser l'rchotz, that a person who's in a mourning state, halachically, he's not supposed to wash. So how come you're washing yourself? I'm not like regular people. Istisani. The prohibition of during mourning that one is not supposed to shower is because of the pleasure one receives from washing himself. But he says, I am an istinus. I am a particularly sensitive person, finicky person, and therefore, for me, a shower is actually not pleasurable. It's just to remove myself from pain, the pain of being dirty. Okay. Second case, when Tevi, his slave, died, he had a slave famous from the Mishnahs in Sukkah, Mishnahs in Sukkah, and from other places. A very righteous slave, was a big Talmud Chacham. Kibel alav tanchumin. He received tanchumin. He took after the body's buried. The people come up and say, Hamakim Yenachem, or they say, different kinds of nechama, of comfort, and he accepted these comforts. And Amrullah, Talmid, his students told him, Rabbeinu, you taught us, Rabbi, that you're not supposed to take these kind of consolations on avodim, because people will think that they're of valid yichus, of that they're actually coming from a place of real lineage, and people might marry their kids, okay, which is not permitted. So he told him, Ein tevi avdi kashar kol avodim. No, my slave is not like all others. Why? Because kasher haya, because he was a kasher, and then everyone knew that he was a very, very unique slave, so people wouldn't make that mistake. Okay. Now the Mishnah finishes. Chassan and writes a liquor. Krishma Laila Harishon Korah. A chassan, if he wants to read Krishma the first night, he can. Okay, which is basically conscious to what we said before. The chassan is patur, but if he wants to, he can. Rishon Gamliel says no. Not everybody who thinks they could. Meaning, if we know that you can't have concentration, it's nira kiyuhara. The Gemara is going to say it looks like haughtiness if you're going to try to say Kriyashma when you're in fact not going to be able to have concentration. Brought down La Halacha, the Mishnah Berurah discusses the fact that nowadays most of us don't have proper concentration most of the time, so therefore we could say Kriyashma on the night of our wedding. He says that interesting. He says that the prohibition of the haughtiness is the opposite. Now, if you don't say Kriyashma, you're implying, or you're trying to show that normally you would have concentration. Tonight you're not, because you're a chassan, and that's ridiculous. The Mishnah Berurah says. Okay, so the Gemara continues. My time, Rabbi Gamliel. Why was Rabbi Gamliel's reasoning for taking a bath the first night? Right. So he says, "Katsavar aninus laila drabanan tichsiv acharisa yoyim mar." Okay, now we have the concept of there's two stages really. This is a big discussion in the commentaries of aninus and of avelus. Aninus is a specific, according to most, a biblical prohibition or a biblical state of mourning that's called aninus, and that is that when the person dies, the whole day that they got that first day when they died. Okay, up until the night, we'll say that was Rabbi Gamliel's opinion. Up until the night, meaning if he died at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, all the way until sunset, that's a daraisa. That's a biblical state of mourning. And after that, the avelus is the next 6.5 days, 7 days is all rabbinic. Okay, so he says he took a shower that first night after, because he held that aninos lailas derabanan, because he held that once nightfall came, no matter when the person died during the day, that night is only derabbanan, is only rabbinic aninus. Okay, because the pasuk says v'acharisa, and the acharisa and the bitterness, her bitterness is kiyoyim mar, like a bitter day. So it's like one day. V'makam istinis lagos b'rabbanan. He held that in the face of one who is incredibly finicky and sensitive, the rabbanan didn't make the gezerah that you shouldn't wash. Okay, now first wide line in the Gemara. The Gemara continues with Kishames Tevi Avdo. When Tevi, his servant, died, we said Tan Rabbanan Avodim Vishvachos, servants and maidservants, aimed Oimdim Aleim B'Shura. One does not have a shura. Shura is a line that after one buries them, which is again also a discussion of how exactly it's done. But a popular belief is that you would have a line like we do nowadays, where people come out right after the grave when the mourners turn to walk back away from the grave, and they have people on this side and people on this side, and they actually walk in between. That's called the Oimdin Alei B'Shura. So we don't do that with people who are mourning for their slaves. We don't say on the Brachos Avelim, the bracha of Avelim that's said by the Suda, the first Suda that the Avelim are supposed to eat is supposed to be provided by other people, not made by themselves. And there's special brachas that are said there. Or V'Tanchume Avelim, or like we said earlier, the consolations that is given to Avelim. There's a story of Mesa Shiv Chassid Shor Eliezer. The maids of Eliezer died, and Nichnasu Talmidav Lenachmai, his students came in to give him nechama, to give him consolation. Kevin Shirayusam, once he saw them coming in, Allah Aliyah, he went up to an upper chamber. Okay, like as if to say, like, don't come after me. They went after him. Nichnas la'anpilan. He went into some anteroom, back room. Nichnas rachar. They came after him. Nichnas draklin. He went into like a reception room. And nichnas rachar. They came after him. So he just turned around and he told them, Amar lahem kimiduma ani. I thought sha'atim nechuyim befrushim. I thought that you guys would be cooled down with warm water, meaning I thought that you guys could take a hint. I thought you could take a hint that I'm trying to not take consolations for my loss, and I see that that you guys are not even you're not even getting a hint with boiling water, meaning I have to be in rooms where I have to run away from you. Did I not teach you that avodah b'shvacha servants and maid servants one does not stand in these lines? We don't say the bracha, we don't take consolation. What do we say to the people who are mourning for them? The same thing that one would say about his ox or his donkey that died. Now, what do you say? Hashem should fill your loss. So you say about his slave and his maidservant, Hashem should fill your loss. Tanya Idach, another brisa says, avodah b'shvachos, servants and maidservants, so you don't give them a head, eulogize them. Rav Yossi says, if he was a good guy, a good slave, you say on him, he was a good, faithful man. And he worked hard and had enjoyment from his fruits. And Amrullah, they told him came but that's what we say about good people, about Jews who are good guys. What are you going to say that about the slaves? You're not going to leave anything else left over for the other people. Okay? Taner Rabbanan taught in current avos el l'shleisha. One does not call the word avos forefathers only to the three first forefathers of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Okay? To exclude like the Shvatim, so to speak. Ve'in current imos, we only call the mothers, the four mothers, the matriarchs, Arba to four, right? So Rivka, Rachel, and Leah. So the Gemara says, my timer. Why is that? If it's because I can't call Shimon, we can't call him one of the forefathers because I don't know if I came from him. I may have came from Reuven. Right? So also with the mothers, we don't know. We don't know if you can overcome from Rachel or Leah, because it's the same problem. So how can you call them the mothers? Ella is not about literally they were your mother. Ad hacha chashivi tfei, right? Till here they were considered superior in terms of their chashivus, in terms of their honor and their worthwhileness. And tfei, I'm sorry, ad hacha chashivi tfei le chashivi. After that, we don't consider to be to have this chashivus. Now that doesn't mean that the shvatim weren't chashiv chas v'shalom. What it just means, the Mefarshim explain that we have a concept of ma'isa avos simon labanim, that there was a special, almost a prophecy in the way that the Avos lived their lives. Obviously, the Imos that they live their life is actually a simon for what's going to be for their children for all eternity. Okay, for the Jewish people for thousands of years. So that power was only endowed to the Avos and the Imos. Okay, so the Gemara says Tanya Idach Avodah b'shvachos ein karnasim Abba Ploni. Again, slaves and maidservants, you don't call them Abba Ploni, right? Which means father so and so, father Jack, or Ima Plonis, or mom so and so. Which was the Mefarshim explained, commentators explained, was a reference to Mr. or Mrs. of today, right? It was a call of honor. You don't call them Mr. George or Mrs. Harris, right? You don't say that. Why? Because the problem is the same problem. People will think they'll come to marry their descendants. So the Gemara says, Gamliel might say, the servants and the maidservants of Gamliel's house, they did call them Mr. and Mrs. So the Gemara says, Maisa Lister, you're bringing that, you just told me it did, and then you're giving me a totally contradictory story. The Gemara answers, Mishum de Chashivi, because they were in fact Chashiv, they had a certain chashivas about them, a certain princeliness from the fact that they were coming from the house of the princes of the Nisim, and therefore everyone knew who they were, and it wasn't a problem. The Gemara continues, what does the verse say? The verse says in Tehillim, in my life I will in my life I will bless you, and in your name I will raise my hands. So we break it down. What does that mean? I will bless you, Zekriyashma. B'shimcha esakapi, which is a reference to raising my hands, which was done in tefillah, zu tefillah. That's prayer. If one does this, Allah HaKasavomer, on him it says, Kemo chelev. The verse says, Kemo chelev, like fat, v'deshen, Tasbia nafshi v'sifsas rananis yahalal pi. It will be totally like satiated. My soul will be satiated, and my lips run in nos, which is plural. Will sing songs. Okay. So what does that mean? Songs, right? So that you'll have the Rananais is plural. His lips will sing the songs of pluralness, which is reference to this world and to the next world. Okay, so we'll stop here and we'll take it from here tomorrow because this is a new thread in a complete